these 30 years, I even don't have 30 days to stay together with my parents.
Yeah, all right, let's do this. Good day, everybody. Ghazali Horela here, and this is episode 11, yeah. Episode 11 of Go Maluku Live. Binota, a very good friend of mine. Well, everyone is a friend of mine, obviously. But Binota is in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, Binota is in the house. He hails from the, and Binota, correct me if I'm wrong, the Juma Tripura community from the Chittagong Hill Tracts, what we now know as Bangladesh. From the top of my head, what you have, your resume is freaking amazing. Like I did a post like the other day on Instagram, I think, or Facebook, LinkedIn, can't remember. Anyway, it was, or TikTok, maybe, yeah, TikTok. That was like all my friends, like in my network, my inner circle, they all have these amazing roles within the UN, within the national context, as a president or secretary general, whatever. And you are I'm a member of the expert mechanism. So, and I'm just a guy that hosts a podcast and a show. So, which I'm fine with though obviously. But when I uploaded that video, like I thought about like how amazing it was, like that everyone that is in my circle, the people that I call dear friends, are ascending to these amazing roles and responsibilities as well. So that's, I just wanted to recognize you for stepping up to that platform, because you were also a board trustee to the voluntary fund on for the OHCHR, co-founder, I believe, was it Indigenous Peoples Human Rights Defenders Network, GCG member, Global Coordinating Group member for the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, AIPP Executive Council. What do you do? Like, all right, currently, obviously, PhD at the ANU in Canberra, and since this year, MRIP. Like, Binota, seriously, did I miss anything, or is it just like 1% of your impressive resume that I just mentioned?
Thank you, Ghazali. No, that's all right. Thank you, Ghazali, for inviting me here. You know what, you are actually doing very great job, and is a part of the history of our Indigenous peoples movement during this critical time that you are meeting or inviting all these Indigenous activists and listening their views and putting them together. That's brilliant work, Ghazali. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you for saying
that. After 20 years or after 40 years, if someone sees all these videos, that will be really a must. Anyway, about myself, yeah, you have introduced very nicely. Thank you so much for that. And yes, of course, I'm from the activist background, from the Chittagong Hill Tracts region, one of the most conflict area, I will say, and a heavily militarized region, and spent my childhood time in the refugee camp, and then studied in different places through, I will say that was also a struggle without parents and living alone and building my own life itself, arranging myself, organizing myself. So that was not that easy though, but that was part of the life struggle. And also my engagement with the Indigenous Peoples movement since my student life at the local level with the students' organizations, and then at the national level with Bangladesh Indigenous Peoples Forum, helping the work on Indigenous Peoples' rights activities, organizing, coordinating, facilitating sometimes. So that's how actually my engagement in general with the indigenous people issues, and with the, it does not go with the bio, all these things, but definitely there's also the background that how I grew up myself with this activism, and now
it is what shaped you, right? It's made you the like the man, not the man that you are today, but it definitely shaped your early childhood, teenage years, early student years, and usually, and they also always say like the first 20 years are years of like trying to find yourself a little bit, and everything that occurs in your life at that point is all like something that shapes you. Yeah, but note that, like, for full disclosure, so that a lot of people know, I've known Binota for many years, that he existed, but actually I think we started working with each other like closely, I think leading up to the World Conference, maybe that could be it. And ever since we talked a lot about, mostly about like how we want to advance Indigenous peoples' right to self-determination is a very, very, very strong point that we both make. But we did not, like, the first couple of minutes that you started talking about your background, that I did not know. Because so if you're willing, of course, obviously, are you willing to expand a little bit on it? Because I think to me it is very important that people know, like, where the reputation, like, people know the reputation of Binota, reputation of a lot of people, but they don't know, like, what the origin story is, where they came from, which is equally important, actually, because that also makes it like almost like explanatory, like, oh yeah, that's why Binota made this decision in life, and that's why he did that in his life. Could you expand, talk a little bit more about that? And also, like, sorry about that, but your microphone is scratching against your shirt, so yeah, if you could hold it, yeah, like that would be perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let me start then from my childhood journey. I think somehow maybe who listen in the future may connect also their life journey too. As I mentioned, that my place, Chittagong Hill Tracts region, is one of the conflict zone and heavily militarized. My family actually displaced a couple of times. But two times I recalled that one, we had to cross the border in India, to India from Bangladesh, to that shelter. And in fact, 1986, people are working for the working group of indigenous population. My family were in the refugee camp in India, Tripura state. That's how I know, reading the story about the working group of indigenous populations. That's at the movement started also at the global level. So, yeah, I was in the refugee camp. Then 1991, I returned to Bangladesh alone. I took shelter to my relative place, and then admitted to a local school. And then from there, and then I moved out from the Chittagong Hill Tracts to the capital, to do higher education. So that's the journey. But at the same time, also everyday experience, seeing how there's human rights violations or atrocities, or everyday experience that you see, you are asked every now and then, where are you going, where are you from, why you are coming here, this and that. So that's also because of the military rule in our place, because you see everywhere, every 1 kilometer military checkpost in a main road. And then if sometimes you walk around in the village, then when these military personnel see you, first thing they ask you, who are you? Where are you from? Why do you come? Or sometimes they even target like if you are studying in the district city or in the capital, they take into account that you are involved with their movement organization. So they really charge you quite a lot. Sometimes they even do torture. So see these kind of experiences in a childhood, seeing this, you really then feel to do something about that. This is when you understand that someone like very innocent person facing the torture, arbitrary arrest without any cause, that's really, if you think deeply, that's really give you some kind of mental trouble too. So actually my case is becoming an activist or talking about the indigenous people's rights or human rights. It's all about give me that kind of sense from the childhood. Like every day how our indigenous communities are growing up, facing these kind of atrocities, militarization, and every now and then living in the fearful situation. So that's really gave me a thought. I mean, at least try to do something, raising the voices wherever I am possible to do that. So that's how the background actually for myself. And,
yeah. Would you say that that these times of adversity have made you have matured you at an earlier age than you should have been matured?
Definitely, that forced me to some extent. For example, when I was in the grade 10, for example, I took part some of the activism. That's because when you were in the school, I mean, when at the time, you know, suddenly there was a massacre in our place just before our social festival. It's called Boishu, or in general, in collective terms, it's called Boishavi. It's the biggest socio-cultural festival in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And then suddenly, just before that, there was a massacre. And then when we went to the school, when came to know that massacre, it was really gave us a shock, mentally shock. And of course, when you were in the grade 10, at least you understand something, right? I mean, at least you get the sense when people talk, this happened, that happened. And that's very normal thing in our region, like arbitrary arrest or extrajudicial killing at the time, because there's a conflict at the time, before the State Accord in 1997. So that kind of situation was there. So there's a thing like how then you feel mentally sad, or because of that, perhaps you think like, why should it be happen? We should protest it. You know? The sense come from that way, actually, the growing sense, like seeing all this kind of atrocities or violence, because you don't have any choice. So there's the thing. That's how also the engagement myself in this process.
Yeah.
So I think you were asking something, like one question I forgot. I'm not sure if I responded to you.
No, it's well, there's only your response, not the right response, but it's obviously your response. And I think previous conversations, and maybe I'm not sure, it is the most people in the movement, in the International Indigenous Peoples movement, have endured in one way or another, some personal experiences of adversity. One is more, how is it like intense than the other. But in all sense, that they all had to, in some way, were forced to mature earlier than, or act like a grown-up earlier than they wanted to. And when society assumes that you're at an age that you play outside or with friends and everything else, you in your state of mind, your psychological state of mind, you're all way further ahead, because you had to make some very serious grown-up decisions in terms of, and it's all about survivability and like being able to survive as a person, as a family. Like my personal experience is not as obviously as severe as yours, but I remember that he passed away a couple of years ago, but I had little to no relationship with my dad and my mom. She was in the movement, in the Maluku liberation movement for self-determination, and like she had to, like, from time to time, had to flee her own home to be able to to go to the UN, go to Geneva, go to New York, and he didn't like that, because like my mom did all the work and got all the attention, and sometimes from time to time she had to sneak out of her house and our house, and I had to, when I was, I don't know, like 8 or 7, maybe younger even, I had to sneak out, my sports bag full with clothes of myself, my siblings, and my mom, sneak out of the house so that we could go somewhere else so that she could do her work. So adversity is something that I recognize as being one of the things that we all had to endure in some form. Adversity, and there, like I said, they come in many different forms, but they all had to contribute to the people that we are today. That's what I truly believe. Seeing I don't know about how about you, Binota, but like in terms of these times of adversity, like bad times, my sense for justice developed early on, and is something that I could see, like something that was, I had my own definition of justice like early on, whereas as kids my age back then, like the only thing that they knew was justified was what the parents told them or somebody else told them. But at least I saw like, well, this is not justified. This is not right. How did you recognize that in some way in your situation or life?
Sorry, can you repeat the last sentence?
Sure. So what it was all about this sense of justice, that with times of adversity, you also see like the flip side of it. This is not justified, or this is not right. So you at an early age, you see the distinction between right and wrong, illegal and justified. So like, did you recognize that development in your life? You always said that you were forced to mature early on.
When you were in the early age, actually, it's difficult to justify what is right, what is wrong, because you don't have a guide to show what is wrong, what is right, because everything you have to do from your own judgment. That's quite challenging, but it's not that easy. And yeah, by saying that, what I like to add here, the point is, actually for us as an activist, those who are involved in activism, sometimes the decision is not that easy, but majority decisions you have to do because that is the needs, the requirement from the time to time. Mm-hmm. Because all the decisions then you do is from your own experience. You may not do the right decision in the beginning, but at the end, you become matured by taking the right decision.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the process. Let me tell you one thing. My own experience again. 1986, when we were in the refugee camp, I left the refugee camp and end of 1990 or early 1991, most probably December or January. In January 1991, something like that. And since 1991 to until today, now to 2020, we are 30 years, right? If you count the years. Mm-hmm. These 30 years, I even don't have 30 days to stay together with my parents because of the situation and because of the reality. So then when you see that from your childhood, even you have not had a chance to live with your parents, who is your guide then? Who is your guardian to guide you? For my case, that was the crucial thing. I was guiding myself since 1991. So there are many mistakes, many failures, but at the same time, I'm happy because what else I could do because I am myself.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the thing. So this is also like I met once, a couple of times, the leader of movement in the Chittagong Hill Tracks. Once upon a time, he led a movement, underground movement too, Mr. Sontu Larma, who signed the accord with, on behalf of the movement and also with the government. He used to tell me before, like becoming an activism is a matter of actually sacrifices everything. It's not the same thing. You have to have a dedication, commitment. On top of that, the sacrifice you make yourself because you are away from your family, your relatives, your friends, everything. So this is also everything you have to do some kind of sacrifice. So that will make you deeply understanding the situation itself also. So yeah, so that's how myself, the adjustment, the justice, and becoming part of this process. So this everything by yourself, by myself.
Well, good on you, man. Like obviously, like, I have a lot of love for you because you're like you're my bro. You're a very good friend of mine. And seeing like how you like went from you are an activist in its purest form because you do a lot of things. You also see the need. No, sorry, I'm saying this the wrong way. There's not a lot of activists out there, and this is just a personal observation. There's not a lot of activists out there that have a purely global vision. There's a lot of activists that I see that have more people-centered, community, region, and which is fine, which is okay. But there's in terms of when it comes to advocacy at the UN level, activism, like, well, I think the best way to do the work is to have that global vision that what we do, if it's in Geneva or in New York, that it has to have a positive impact on Indigenous peoples all around the world, not just in the Pacific, or not just in Asia, or not just in Russia, but everywhere around the world. And you, like, seeing you like do what you do best. I think, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, I think you're very self-aware in all that, that you know, like, which process to take in, and eventually look where you are right now. Like, you're doing a PhD right now in Canberra, and on top of that, expert member of the mechanism, expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous people. So, like, it has, yeah, what should I say? Like, kudos, man. Like good on you. Like, nothing but respect for how you have, yeah, like, have dragged yourself through, not drag yourself, yeah, but how you walk through life, you know, and with a sense of purpose, with a yeah, with a sense of you know, wanting to do it for the greater good. That's what I see, that in everything you do. So that's definitely something that's super commendable, and I hope that, and it inspires me too, 100%. And like, looking at you, and I don't want to pump too much smoke up your own ass, but like, it is yeah, credit's due. Yeah, I like to give credit when credit is due, and acknowledge you for everything you have done. And believe me, like, I didn't invite you to the show just to yeah, yeah, say all this, but like, given everything that you just now explained and talked about, I just felt the need to say that, to state this and acknowledge your work and you as a person. Binota, there's thank you so much, not only for saying that, but also going on a show. And I can't even remember if I said it actually in the beginning of the show, the episode. But like, there was in the short turnaround, there was people sent in some questions, obviously knowing that you are the member of the Expert Mechanism on Rights of Indigenous Peoples. You don't have to talk too much about it if you don't want to, because you're free to answer any question in any way, shape, or form that you like. So if you're okay with it, we'll just chuck in the questions, because I think that there's a lot of, I think, in terms of the people that are watching, listening, there's a lot of value in whatever you already have said, but also are going to say. So let's jump into one question that was sent in from a sister. And for now, people would like to remain anonymous, so I'm fine with that. But I think it is such a very good question, and it goes into like, yeah, into the thing that we did, to the experiences that we just now talked about. The question is, have you ever failed at anything? And if so, how did you handle it? Is there anything that comes to mind? Oh, sorry, yeah. So question is, have you ever failed at anything? If so, how did you handle it? And what did you learn?
That's a very good question. As I mentioned about my lifestyle a little bit, of course, there is quite a lot of failure thing. But at the same time, then you learn from that failure. So if I see from my activism thing, of course, there are a lot of issues you do, advocacy. Most of the time you are not succeed. But sometimes you get a positive commitment, and sometimes you even don't get it. But I never feel disappointment because I have tried my best. And there are two things actually you can take it. One, what you are not succeed, whether you will say this is failure or not. I don't say actually this is failure things. This is, I say, a positive step moving forward. So I don't frame the terminologies from that way, like I failed, anything of failure. Of course, you target so many things you don't succeed in. Does not mean that you are a failure or you failed. But sometimes because of the reality also force you to be failed. And that's why I take this way. Whatever I couldn't succeed, I take this as a positive that this is an initial stage or I have tried my best. And I don't feel like I failed it.
Yeah.
So that's how I deal the issue. I also deal the reality. Like for my PhD, I didn't get it first time. I tried it, but there was the process. Right? So this is the thing. So the question is good in a simple way. What you don't succeed in the beginning, you will say you are a failure. But I will not say this is a failure. This is just a process. So what you need to do is you should try to make the system, not getting into the system. You create the system. So then you will not feel this or failure.
Binota, if you can, because I think this is such a very important lesson that you're not describing right now, because it goes to mindset, as in like seeing a situation, and instead of like acknowledging as or just acknowledging it as a failure, but like seeing it as an opportunity. Is that something that you can you, because it's a mindset, can you explain a little bit on how you arrived at that mindset? Is it something that you had all along when you were growing up as a kid, or is it something that you had an experience and you wanted to like turn that around from something negative into a positive?
I will say this is a process. I cannot give you the correct example for this thing, but adapting the negative situation in a way to divert into a positive situation, it's actually, I think, a process. You need to set your mind and prepare mentally. So I think, well, I don't know how I will answer this one, but that way how I feel, I see. All these things, like, because one thing is, if you are failure, you didn't succeed, then what will be the next stage? If you are disappointed or you feel bad or you are broken down, then it's gone. There is nothing else. But if you think other way around, this is the initial stage what I have attempted. Let me do the second stage another way. So that's how the actually things. I also feel them doing like that. You know? That's how I also approach myself sometimes, most of the time.
In terms of like the premise, because you mentioned it, the PhD, for example, you didn't get it first time around. So how long did it take for you to change strategy, for example, like to do differently? Did you like, so you got rejected, did you like flip the switch? All right, now I'm going to do it differently, or like did it need some time? How did that process go?
Change the strategy.
So you just change it?
So it took only 1 year for me. Like my first attempt, for example, November in 2016 failure, but September 2017 has succeeded.
Yeah.
And then 18 enrolled.
Right.
So the process, like first time I was rejected, but I was confident that if I review or revise my proposal or make sure the right thing is there, that what I am expecting for, I was confident that it might be considered.
Yeah.
So that's how. So that's why I said a strategy. It's actually, our case is, the way I see mostly, taking the step as a strategy. Every step where you have some negative, then how you want to put it as a positive.
Yeah.
So this is a strategy that you have to take for your own. That's how I think. Even for our moment case, like for example, now what should we do? Like some government says, we don't have indigenous peoples, we have local communities.
Yeah.
So now the point is like, because government itself is state, so we need to talk to them, make them understand like why indigenous people case should not be the local communities. What are the difference between the terminologies itself, and why we are also unique as indigenous peoples, why we are unique from many other groups, why we call peoples also instead of people. So see all this kind of thing, like, so this is the thing, like first time you might not be in the right place, but once you initiate or once you start talking, after some time, even government will think about that. Like for example, indigenous people's terminology case, how long it took just getting the S with the people. The historical fact, it says like 20 years. It was like populations, from populations to people and people to peoples. It takes quite a long process, right? So there's a thing like for our case, I take all those examples as a positive examples and get inspired myself for the advocacy work. It's a process. That's how we have to do. So I never see things failure. I rather see it is other way, like we tried the first stage. It is not a failure, but this is just an initiative. So let's go for the next, second initiative, third initiative. Like the UN trip negotiation, even the World Conference. Remember, the simple one, just getting the modalities in the GA.
Yeah.
How many rounds we had to have the negotiation, how many times our co-facilitator had to bargain, negotiate in New York, and we have to support from the Asia region in the World Conference process. I'm talking about that. It is into 2013 incident.
Yeah.
Getting the modalities of the World Conference, right?
Yeah.
It started 2012, and 2013 it was still in the blue. There's nothing happened, and on behalf of us, John Hendrickson fighting in the New York, sitting with the member states. See, so this is the thing, no? But at the end, we got it, right? Yeah. The language we wanted in the text, in the regulation, the modalities of the World Conference, we got it at the end. So will you say this is a failure? But in the very beginning, it was hard. Very beginning, it was like something like rejected type, right?
Yeah.
If you see the member states statement in the room, all about diverting the issue and coming up with new proposal, right?
Yeah.
But this is not a failure. So we got it.
No, you're absolutely right. Binota, can you, I'm sure you can remember this. One, which was for me, at least one of the most profound moments of the Permanent Forum was, remember that the last day of the Permanent Forum, that was in 2014, that the President of General Assembly still not had made a decision on consultations, and everyone, there's a lot of people, caucuses, regions were already thrown out the World Conference, like it's not going to happen. It's a product of colonization, you know, like everything that they said, and so the whole the idleness of the PGA was not helping either. And remember that the last day, we sat there in the North Lawn building, and the GCG, so like the Indigenous Global Coordinating Group, sat in one row, and I think Daily, she brought the agenda item back up on a World Conference, and you like for people that to describe it to people that are listening and watching, is that you saw that, states, friendly states, like took the floor in support of Indigenous peoples. And GCG gave a statement in expressing our dismay on the PGA's not doing anything. Tracy did a very good delivery on that. And yeah, you saw like states and the expert members, and I think it goes to also like into to a certain extent like what you're saying, as like you have not failure but like challenges upon challenges, thresholds that you have to overcome. And then all of a sudden, like at the final day, you have this last 30 like hour and a half, 1 hour, that was so profound and so powerful, that everyone saw like, oh yeah, this is we can do this, and we can. And that, for me at least, that triggered like created like a ripple effect. Active members started to respond, states as well. And then a couple of months later, we had the World Conference outcome document. No, I think it's like the whole, how you explained it, how you framed the question, and also like said it, do not see it as a failure, because like if you see it as a failure, I think that's a mindset. And in terms of mindset, I love the mindset of people. So thank you so much for explaining that it's like how you approach that question, how you synthesize it, and how you channel it, and how it all comes out. I think it's something that a lot of people can benefit from, having that particular mindset. All right.
There's just to add with you. Yeah. See the World Conference process. We had several steps, activities, but all the time we had tremendous challenges, right? Every step. But at the end, we succeeded by doing the real World Conference in Alta. We succeeded 100%. Getting there. We succeeded getting the outcome document with elaborations, what is our real expectation. And I will say that's for the future generation too. And then that's adopted by the UN General Assembly, that outcome document. Later they change. They have their own way of language and adoption.
Mm-hmm.
But the elements, language, proposal, all are bringing in one place was not that easy. The GCG, a global coordinating group, we all had a different level role to play at the time. And you Rudion, you co-chair in the process at the end. See, you understand well as well that how challenging it was for each step that we took for the World Conference. Will you say this is a failure? It has its challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Every stage, but we succeeded, right?
Yeah.
So this is the thing. This is the inspiration. This is the encouragement. This is the courage. How we also build. So this is the also, like me also put other way around. Collective decision making. This is the old traditional system of indigenous peoples. That's also reflected in the World Conference. So every indigenous community, their decision making actually collective. This is a traditional system. It's already there.
Mm-hmm.
What is not there at the international level? That practice actually is not written in the international format, international language. But indigenous peoples have it. And World Conference is one of the proof that we have it, this collective decision. There's the participation, that the old traditional system, indigenous peoples practice, that's also reflected at the international level.
Yeah.
I've never realized that.
Neither have I. I didn't realize it until now. That we have, like, and I think that's what people are hoping for, right? Engaging with the United Nations at the international level, that it somehow it starts to embrace these elements of these indigenous elements of respect, consent, reciprocity, self-determination, all these principles that we deploy. So yeah, I think I'll add that to the list of things that the many outcomes, because a lot of people only refer to the outcomes of the World Conference as the outcome document, but I think it's also the things that are not written into the outcome document that should also be mentioned, which is like the decision making process that indigenous peoples have, that we that we made the international community to respect our process. So that's a major accomplishment too.
Just to add also one more point, like we were talking about this free, prior, informed consent, and this become part of the international human rights law. Mm-hmm. That's also the oldest traditional practice of indigenous peoples in the community level.
Yeah.
Any decision they take at the village level, for example, farming, it's the community decide through the discussion. Then they take part the harvesting or farming or agricultural activities or communal activities on the community.
Yeah.
So this pre-prior informed consent, you see, that's the unique of indigenous traditional practice system, which has not been actually documented as one of the oldest traditional practices of indigenous peoples. Mm-hmm. You can ask to any indigenous community, every decision making of the community level, forget about the city, you know. But in the community, they have this system. Every decision, every cultural activities, social activities in the community, they decide together. that they consent it together. So that's the prior informed consent they do practice in the community. Do you think that international community, so-called in the UN system, sitting there, they do realize it? Or corporates? No.
Yeah.
But there's the indigenous peoples actually who brought these terminologies, right?
Yeah.
And also what we have not documented yet, that these oldest practices in the community level, it's part of the building civilization. If we talk about the growing of indigenous civilization, I think we should not avoid the space of prior informed consent that also have part of this growth of civilization in the indigenous peoples. Because every indigenous community, they have this old traditional practice system, justice system, social system, cultural practice system, harvesting system, farming system, the community level. That's all the process they established. This is one of the prior informed consent. And this has not been recorded as part of the indigenous traditional system. What is recorded is just now we are talking about the international human rights law, right? So this is also the other point we have to think in the future. Otherwise, this traditional, the intellectual property on that, we will lose it.
Is that, like, if you think about the future, Binota, and I think for so people know, I know we have to have a lot of talks about this. Like, what do you see? Like, yeah, maybe ask like indirectly. What do you see in terms of future of the movement of indigenous peoples, and does that is that in line with what you want to see, or does it conflict with what you would like to see?
You know, while I was going through all these documents and indigenous peoples related documents of the UN system, particularly in the 1970s, 80s documents, if you see the elements, the political language used to all those statements and report, it has gradually started changing over the years in the text. And the rapid change was after the adoption of the UN Declaration in 2007. So for example, say, now we are talking about self-determination rights. If you see the language in 1970s and 80s, indigenous peoples, we are talking about the indigenous peoples' rights and autonomy, self-governance. That's because that's the core elements to survive for indigenous peoples. But after the adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the discussion about the self-determinations has rapidly changed in the international context. And what has been grown in the discussion is more about the promotional activities of the UN DRIP, but very little touch on the Article 3 of the UN DRIP, the self-determination, or Article 4, self-governance, autonomy, all this. So then what is the change I see is, because of the UN declarations, promotional activities of the UN declarations, now there are so many in between them last 10 years, so many resources are flooding just about project-based activities, promotional activities in the UN DRIP. So what is the positive side here? People becoming to know about the UN declarations more, what is there. But what we are losing is actually the political discourse on the self-determinations, the indigenous people's concept of self-determination, autonomy, self-governance. We are not discussing much on that issue, which is really the core issue in relation to the land, territory, in relation to culture and identity. And we are not touching much on that area. Recently
Sorry,
I saw...
Binota, your microphone is...
Recently, sorry. Recently,
okay.
we have seen that IWGIA, International Work Group for Indigenous Affairs, they have initiated some activities. I think they are bringing back some kind of the discussion on this area now, the self-determination, autonomy, self-governance. This discussion is very important, I will say, because the member state government have a very negative view when we talk about the self-determination. And when we talk about the self-governance and autonomy, they have a different view. And what I'll say, I agree with the special rapporteur views he mentioned last time, and also James Anaya also mentioned before, that indigenous people's self-determination is not something like a separatist movement. It is all about having the rights to manage their own issues through their own way. It is nothing to do with the sovereignty issue. It has nothing to do with the separatist issue. This is all about to give the power to them to take their own decisions on the issues, or on the issues relating to them. So this discussion is not taking place much. So therefore, what is happening? The conflict region in the indigenous people's land and territories, it has been growing because the concept of the self-determination itself was not clarified. Even the article itself, you see the UN Article 3, the similar language in the Convention of Civil and Political Rights, Article 1, and Economic and Cultural Rights, the Article 1. If you see very simply, it's very abstract type of language. It is not interpreted much detail. How we see ourselves like as an indigenous community. We have relatives, we have clan, we have relation, culture, language, society, community, land, our spirituality, our justice system. So these all are how actually you can interpret. So this is also part of the self-determinations. So until or unless we are not recognize all this issue through the means of self-determination, the conflict will continue there. Yeah. Because there are state law, there are pluralistic society, there are different views, different intervention. So this is the thing, like where we are actually a bit behind in this discussion. I'm not saying that what is happening by the indigenous activists doing the right thing. I'm not saying that. They're also doing their best. But at the same time, also, I think should not be concentrated more about the project-based thing. It's much more connecting to the needs and also the political perspectives. Yeah. So that's where we are actually, I think, that's my observation. We are lacking in the approach level.
Is the whole discourse, or maybe better said, the lack of discourse on self-determination, is that something that, and there's a question as well from people that was sent in, is that something that motivates you to stay in a movement, to keep working for it? Because and I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, because for me, what motivates me to stay in a movement and is to do exactly that, so that indigenous peoples know how to claim right to self-determination, know to talk about right to self-determination, and being able to reinforce their justice systems, their food sovereignty and everything else. That is what motivates me to do exactly that, with the whole overarching goal or vision that indigenous nations can emerge at the same level as states. Did you, in your view, have something similar? No, sorry, I don't want to guide you into that question. Do you have a vision or a goal, personal goal or professional goal, for staying or still being motivated to stay in the movement?
One of the reasons driven me to be part of the movement is definitely to advocate for the rights of indigenous peoples. Mm-hmm. That's my realization. And then if I say indigenous people's rights, this is a huge thing. I cannot just explain in one sentence.
Sure. Yeah.
You have to understand. But the personal goal, actually, there is nothing much a personal goal there. Only the thing is, the way I always think, how I can make a positive contribution towards the indigenous people's rights movement in many ways and different level. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. It's actually, I don't have any personal goal or personal ambition on that. Nothing else. No. Even let me tell you one thing. Even now, the PhD I am doing, you know why? One of the reasons I am targeted doing the PhD is actually doing some kind of deep research on indigenous people issues. There are so many scholars. You will get it from the Australia, North America, like USA, Canada, New Zealand. Hundreds or thousands of indigenous scholars are already there. But if we see from our Asia regional perspective, where I come from, we don't have many. I'm not saying that I could do everything. Not this is the point. The point is also to encourage others to look into the issue, culture, identity, history, civilization, all this and that. Yeah. Look, one of the biggest contribution in this civilization is from the indigenous peoples. Actually, indigenous peoples, the ancient civilization that has contributed building this civilization. Mm-hmm. But if you see all this historical perspective, perhaps you might read the civilizations in the Latin America, the Mayan civilization, all that. But if you see from the South Asia or even Indonesia or in the Mekong region, the civilization, it has grown. But there is nothing about the indigenous people's issues are there. Not particular perspective. Mm-hmm. So even the history itself excluded, those who write the history excluded the indigenous peoples, their contribution to growth the civilization. So that's one thing. But my point is not that deep. My point is at least by having this kind of research degree or initiative is to encourage others why research is important for us, because this is the evidence that you can live for the next generation about your culture, your community, your history. So this kind of thing. Like I can also give you an example, like indigenous villages, for example. There are so many indigenous villages whose history is more than 100 years, old history they have. Are we documented on this kind of villages? We are not. All the territory we have, like the history of those territory, you have centuries of history. The generation to generation is that generations has been living to that territory. We don't have any specific research or evidence or written document on that. So my point is, it's like, I don't know what could I do in the future as after doing the PhD, but definitely to contribute in these global perspectives. If I may not possible, maybe others whom I can also encourage to do research or be part of that, or training the people how to do a research.
Sure, yeah.
So they will give some kind of sense to them, like about their language, history, culture, identity issue. So this is the thing. This is the point driven me to be involved this kind of research study.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a way better answer than I gave to the question of what motivates you to stay in the movement. I think that's also the reason why you're an expert member and I'm not.
No, you are more than that. Come on.
Binota, we'll have to do the last two questions like rapid. Otherwise, we'll stay here for another 2.5 hours, which is fine with me. But yeah, like people, I'm sure that you have a lot more important things to do today. So obviously, what people would like to know is like with the next question, what impact do you want to have or make as an expert member?
That's very. I think that's very something like challenging work. An expert member. I have just started here. As an MD, as an expert member in the MD. But one of the aim I have is how to engage with the government in terms of understanding the indigenous people issues, Asian governments. It's not about taking into the statement like very negative view. It is more about to see the constructive approach. For example, why we are as indigenous peoples feel that we should have the right to self-determination. For example, how we see it. So my one of the objectives is actually to initiate some activities, at least to create an environment where government and indigenous people's representatives can talk. And also, if you see our Asia regions, most of the places are actually a conflict area. And this really hugely affecting to indigenous peoples. It's very huge, And this thing like how actually we can create some positive environment, at least to reduce the intents of conflict and human rights violations. So this is one of the area, and also UN DRIP, almost all the Asian states except 2 or 3 supported UN DRIP. So how we can promote through the government work, the UN trade, I can engage more. So this is the basically I wanted to do. So to create the platform.
Yeah.
And well, it is actually only possible if you are in Geneva, if you have this physical meeting. That's because it's easy to talk in Geneva than in the capital.
Yeah.
Or it's easy to talk in New York than the capital.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see the engagement.
Yeah.
The global politics are changing, and we also need to change our approach.
Mm.
That's what I understand.
Okay.
There are quite positive things also there. So we have to see how best outcome we can bring from the government,
right,
on our issues.
Yeah.
So that's what my initial expectation.
Sure. Yeah.
As an expert member, I'm not saying that I will succeed, but that's what I wanted to say. Like at least the message, the contract you establish.
Yeah. And did the activist work that you already did throughout the years, did it help at least when it comes to establishing relationships, knowing the mandates of the various states, or the positions of the various states? Did that help in any way? I'm asking so that, for example, I don't know, there could be a young kid in the Chittagong Hill Tracts being somewhat inspired from your story and wondering, I want to be an expert member as well, but should I be an activist first, or should I go to PhD first? So like, I think I'm asking the question with that particular mindset. And before you answer, like, could you use the microphone? Like, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. That's I don't know how I will respond to that question. That's because for myself, starting a PhD, I had a almost 12 years gap in between. I finished my first master's in the philosophy in 2003. So then I have started another master's on the environmental issue, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 12 years difference. So in between that 12 years, I contributed as an activist in the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Movement through my direct engagement. And so there's the thing, how I did. And after that, I took this education because we need people every sector, at least, to deal with the situation or issue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my realization for this higher education. So, and as an activist of the Chittagong Hill Tracts or anywhere in the world, they can also do the same. Some people take their career, they don't stop the education in between. After masters, and then they go for PhD, and after PhD, then they start their career.
Mm-hmm.
And for the activists like me, we have a different situation because facilities matter.
Mm.
Many indigenous children, they even don't have these facilities. The nearest primary schools, it takes more than 3 hours to get to the school, the remote areas.
Yeah.
Many indigenous areas, they don't have this infrastructure facilities as well. So it's challenging It's difficult. So those who are studying at the village, the community, who has these kind of challenges, after doing the masters, not everyone can do this because it's a challenge, language barrier, financial barrier, all this. But by somehow if they manage to do this, then there another struggle start like survival. To compete with the mainstream populations to get a good job, to survive. It is not that easy because language barrier, cultural barrier, social barrier, so many challenges are there. It's not that easy. So by the time he sets that level, by the time he or she starts to understand the global view, it's already 30 plus. In the meantime, in a developed country, at 30 years old, he or she already established position, right? So there's the challenge for the indigenous children. It's not that easy. So it is, I will say, of course, the inspirations comes from own determination. That's my understanding. And for this case also, despite having the barriers in every stage, how he will see then want to proceed, it's up to the person.
Yeah.
But definitely it is a part of the struggle as well, challenging part. So I rather say this way.
Yeah, no, by all means. Yeah. Appreciate it. 100%. Is there anything, because we're a little bit, we're out of time. Is there anything that you want to share, state, or want people to think about after all this? Maybe there's something that I forgot to ask, or something that still is on your mind?
Well, I have not thought anything. Because I think whatever I felt, I shared with you just now about my journey, about my engagement, about my expectation as an expert member, and also the way I understand our Indigenous Peoples movement and also our rights issue, self-determination rights, all this. What I want to see, I don't know how people will take this. One thing is, Indigenous people's rights is not all about Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals. It is all about the political determination. So this is the point, how you will build your political determination for your rights. Sustainable Development Goals or Millennium Development Goals, it was all about the project. And that has also created, these project-based activities also created a lot of conflict, division among the indigenous peoples. But one point, if you stick like the political determination that the rights you feel should have, you should work, talk, think about that. Project-based activities will never give our self-determination rights or political rights. That's my understanding. Of course, someone may argue that how will then you survive? It's part of your strategy. How will you take this? Of course, those who are in the struggle in the moment, they are also surviving, right? They are there. But they don't have the fancy life. They are not traveling in the aeroplane or in the business class or whatever, right? But they are working on the ground for their rights, They are talking, they are negotiating, they are advocating.
Mm-hmm.
So my simple understanding also there. You can travel, you go, but what is our political determination? What is your community political determination? What is your community feelings? What is your real situation? Do you think $5 million project on the SDGs or Millennium Development Goals on the education, this and that will get rid of from your political rights? What if you don't have the self-determination rights? What if this $5 million, whether creating conflict among the indigenous communities, fighting themselves at the end, third party is coming, taking all the facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the point.
Yeah.
This is you, me, everyone who are part of the community, indigenous peoples. So you have to decide about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I can say. Look, I work as a program coordinator in the AIPP Secretariat, 5 years almost. And I also observe few indigenous peoples organizations in different countries. So this is the thing, like you come approach the project-based activities and you actually divide them. Like, for example, you and me in the same country, we have two different organizations. And third party giving the money to me, like $4 million project, or you $2 million project, but at the end, you and me are competing each other, like, he is getting this, I am not getting this. Or you would say, he is getting this, I am not getting this. Then the tension, mental distance grow.
Yeah.
So at the end, what happened, all about the interest come in, and your political determination then gradually, going away.
Mm. Yeah.
That's what I see there, most of the thing. Like you even see now, colorful poster everywhere. Right? I can give you one example. Two types of organizations in one country.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing capacity building activities. One organizations, they organize all the event like in the 5-star hotel or nearby the sea beach, all this and that, fancy places. But other organizations, they are doing capacity building to the remote areas. They are going to the community.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing the training. They are living with the community. So then when it comes for the project implementation, the one doing in the 5-star hotel or nearby the sea beach, they will be more attracted than the one going to the community,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they can frame with a beautiful picture, with a beautiful this and that. And those who are going to the community, they don't have that language capacity. They cannot write a very good research proposal. They cannot raise the fund, but they love doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So the choice is all ultimately then you, what do you feel from your bottom of heart? Are you becoming part of the system of this trade-off, or you want to be the driving position to rule the system? If you want to rule the system, then you go to instead of going to the 5-star hotel, go to the community level.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them like why the land is important, how we connect. Because most of them, they understand the rituality, everything, but they might not have the feelings like deep connection. If you connect this, they will be more aware than the one just you have the PowerPoint presentation slides, even than that one.
Yeah.
So indigenous peoples movement still exists because of some of those activities who are going to the really in the community doing that. not the one is doing a 5-star hotel. I asked one organization, why you are doing this one? So the person was telling me, because this is the part of the project, we have to do this, we have to show them, the donor, because this is the donor requirement.
Yeah.
So then your thinking, your thought also diverting, right? Those who are participating in that kind of events, their perception is also changing.
Mm-hmm.
The changing is, wow, if I become part of these kind of organizations, I am sleeping in the 5-star hotel. I might be traveling in abroad soon for this meeting.
Mm. Yeah.
And there will be other third parties, organizations also inviting you. We have this international seminar, and then you are going, even though you don't understand actually what is going to discuss there, but you are attending.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how the creation, the division, mental perception is giving to. That's happening very much.
Yeah.
And that's where actually also the generations, not only ourselves, but next generations after us who are thinking of, they have also to think about this political determination, the engagement, the idea, all this. I mean, that's where I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I see the exact same as it. I'm tempted to say that indigenous peoples are now more organizations, not indigenous peoples in general, but there are certain organizations, indigenous peoples organizations, that are very prone to worship at the altar of funders, of these funding institutions, and by extension, it somewhat commodifies our rights agenda, as it uses our rights agenda as a way to get funding instead of the other way around, whereas we should be advancing our rights. And I see it as well. That there are a lot of organizations that do a lot of good, but they do not get the funding because they don't have the means to organize these fancy meetings in Holiday Inn resorts or hotels and Sheraton ballrooms and everything else, which is a pity. I'm hoping that we, at least people like yourself, myself, and like other people, that we can at least help them in a way to level the playing field, that they get the same opportunities or find their own opportunities, find their own funding sources, so that we're not all of us at the mercy of funders, not at the mercy of these big projects, these big projects, in terms of whatever you want to call it, SDGs, MDGs, or what now, climate change is also very good. It's also a very good funding machine as well.
No, that's true, Ghazali. Let me also add, like all these funding instruments, and that's where also create a lot of division among the indigenous peoples. Even, please don't take another way, like say the climate change issue, the environmental issue. The huge funding are there, just project-based activities. The point is, like, who is getting all those funding? Those who are very good in talking. So that's why I said indigenous peoples movements also actually hijacked by the elite group. Those are the elite who were part of the UN system on the indigenous people issues, but now they have the established network, they have the funders, they are everywhere, and they're approaching for all these funding activities because they are smart. Language wise, they are far advanced than the one working in the community. So now funder also looks those people, not the one actually working to the community, or those who are working with the community.
Yeah.
So this is the problem. And now that's why mainstream population, mainstream people also blame to indigenous peoples, like because there are indigenous peoples who created their level as an elite because they have a very good connection, they have a very good approach capacity, they can write very attractive research, project proposal, funding this and that. And now those who are saying this, like from the mainstream population, because they are observing like how those indigenous leaders are trading off their own indigenous community for their own purpose. See, this is, there are quite a few, discussion I heard about that. This is mostly happening in the developing countries, like, not the developed, not America or Nordic countries, not all those countries, or Australia or New Zealand, but mostly like countries coming from the Latin America or Africa or Asia. So this is the thing, like how it comes, it drives people motivation as well.
Yeah.
And we are very much now in this phase, like running after these funders.
Yeah.
And we have also seen these things, how things are gradually changing. You can see the change as well. It's how these project-based activities suddenly came up, and also driving indigenous people's movements to different level. Like when I started MDGs, suddenly it comes for the project for health, education, blah, blah, training. And then gradually it changed until now. The gradually changing is that the way it should focus the human rights, for the indigenous people's rights. There is less attention to the human rights. Of course, everything part of the human rights, but touching the core issue of the human rights of indigenous peoples.
Yeah.
Like for example, before we teach everyone, the training program, how do you submit a complaint to the special rapporteur? How do you write a report to the special rapporteur of the UN agency? Why this is human rights? All these these trainings or these approaches are there. But now it has rapidly changed everything. That kind of training you will see very less now conducting. Right? Now the training is, what do you understand SDG? What do you understand MDGs? The training itself, the contents. Or what do you understand about this UNFCCC facilitative working group? Why not? How do you understand the human rights and how it is connected to here? Why our human rights is connected here? Why our human rights is connected to there? How you will submit the report? Because this is still relevant for indigenous peoples. But the capacity building is not touching there. It's touching almost, because the funder is looking for the working, you are working on the climate change, then you will write what is REDD+, what's benefit there, what is not benefit there. Like this kind of training that you are conducting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there will be perhaps to 90 minutes a session. What is human rights? How it is connected? But the core issue of the human rights should be the one the whole things are controlling. But that's another point actually in the capacity building most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, now is the land grabbing happening to Chittagong Hill Tracks now. There's a 5-star hotel building, all this and that. How many organizations from the indigenous people itself actually can submit a communication report to the special rapporteur? There is none except one or two most probably.
Yeah.
That is because over the years, the organizations dominated there, mostly working on the project base and also focusing different topics, like the climate change, like the traditional knowledge, like this and that. Mm-hmm. I understand that's also part of the human rights, right? If we touch it, you touch it. But the core issue, like when your human rights are violated, how we can address at the international level or even at the national level. We are not touching all those areas for the capacity building side. So this is one of the challenge that we see on the ground. But donor will not understand this. Donor understand, oh, I trust this person because he or she was this level, worked there. Okay, how many he or she wanted? 2 million, okay, approved. But look at most of them, build 2-3 story building or bought apartment in the capital.
Yeah.
So that's how also the introduction to the corruption.
Yeah.
But anyway, I am not going that point, but my point is basically donor also have to think, the change their strategy, who are really working to the community, for the community, and do not have a connection with so-called fancy international level, but do not need to the channel, but they can use all those channel, media to reach out to the community by seeing whether actually working or not.
Yeah.
Not the abstract level like, oh, I know that person and they are doing great. Of course, now you have the software, you can prepare very attractive, colorful report, putting beautiful pictures, all this and that, like the quotation, making 2-3 quotation in between, and some graph, how many train, how many women, men, what topics to cover. You can make a very attractive report.
Yeah.
Of course, because they know how to make it.
Yeah.
But the real impact if you really want to do is like try to connect to the ground, on the ground. So that's what I think the donor should think about that.
Yeah.
They should try to bring the diversity in their support system.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, and also hopefully that that's on the donor side, but also on the indigenous side, hopefully that we're not. It's a slippery slope, right? You know, like it starts here, but it can slowly go down a circle, down a drain. I would almost say that can only be detrimental to our rights dialogues, discussion, or rights like self-determination, free power from consent, and all the other rights that we should be talking about more extensively, and claiming more, and knowing how to use the UN system more, to claim our rights. Anyway, it's a very long dialogue discussion, but I think it needs to happen. But yeah, Binota, thank you so much for your time sitting down with me. I know you're leading up to like the DMREP sessions, the virtual sessions, and good luck with that. And yeah, definitely, hopefully, once this whole COVID-19 thing clears, we can we can meet in Geneva or New York or wherever. Just tell me, like, wherever you want to meet, we can yeah, as always, yeah, kick some ass, like rock and roll and kick some ass. So like, no, thank you so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.